affected by the current opioid crisis. We all have a personal story with either a victim or a victim's family of one. I am both. I am both the victim and the victim's family. As I have been open about it before, my ex-husband was abusive both verbally and physically. However, I never told you the dark side of the story. He was addicted to opioids. And because of that, I saw what they did to him. They took the man that I fell in love with in college and turned him into someone that I did not know. They turned him into a monster, someone that I did not recognize. That's when I knew I would do everything in my power to stop the opioid epidemic and help Tennesseans here. I recently learned that my opponent, Trey, overprescribed to his nurses and lost his medical license, and then my other Democratic opponent, Mitchell, who got suspended from teaching because a student found him high in his office. I don't think this is very becoming of congressional candidates, and I believe they obviously can't do anything about an epidemic that is killing thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives each day. So that is why I'm here today to stand, and I will fight with medical as experts as well as take proven treatment plans instead of just putting them in incarceration and helping to fight the opioid epidemic here in Tennessee and then as well as for the U.S. in Congress. Thank you.
Before we take questions, and I know you're a candidate, but just for the
Yeah.
video, say your name and who you are and all that fun
Okay. Hey, I'm April Carroll. I'm currently a state representative for the 69th District. I'm running for the 5th Congressional District.
stuff. Okay. Questions for Ms. Carroll?
Can I just ask why you waited till now to discuss the opioid situation with your husband? Like, originally when you first made your statement, you made it seem more or less you were a victim. And now it's almost like you're changing your stance, whereas you're not so much a victim because he was victim to his own addiction. I
I have always been a big proponent of helping the opioid epidemic. As state representative, you can go back and look at my voting record on that. It just happened that I got the information and it timed correlation with when I was releasing my opioid epidemic plan. It had absolutely nothing to do with it. I had always planned on releasing something on the opioid epidemic.
When you say high, was he high on opioids or high on any other?
Yeah, it was
substance?
opioids.
And also, what, in your opinion, if I agree with you that the solution may not be to send people to prison and things like that, but what is your example? I mean, the main example that's given by the other opinion would be to help them foster a career and get back on their feet, and so this attack seems kind of counterproductive to that.
Absolutely. I'm all about rehabilitation. That's my main focus is rehabilitation, and I think rehabilitation, I think both of the gentlemen would tell you that they've overcome the epidemic that they have, but it's not something to be ignored. They've been rehabilitated to where they are and they're able to run for Congress. So I think rehabilitation speaks volumes for everyone involved.
So if they've overcome their situation and you're saying that it still should not be ignored, what's to say we should ignore your affair?
Because, well, I'm very open about my affair. I've never tried to hide my affair, and I'm very blunt about my affair. He was both verbally and physically abusive, like I've said numerous times. So I don't think that my affair, it more or less, just because I had an affair with an abusive husband who physically hurt me, you broke ribs and things of that nature, should be compared to either my marriage today or anything else within this campaign.
So yes or no, regardless, you still feel like you shouldn't be attacked for what's happened in the past because you're past it and you're over it, but we should still address them for what they've done in the past even though they're past it. Yes or no?
What we would like to point out with the April campaign is the fact that April is honest about her past and was public with you and forthcoming. She did not hide it. She did not make it a secret.
So we should just ignore that instead of theirs.
In fact, we're not asking you to ignore it. That's why we were so forthcoming about it. And that's the reason we've brought these things to light, is because we think when it comes to public office, honesty and transparency are the #1 issues. And letting someone hide the sins of their past instead of bear it on their souls like April has is not okay in today's modern world.
So you're saying there won't be any, so you've been totally transparent, there won't be anything that comes out later that we don't know about?
We have always been up and coming with what is going on. We've always been honest with ourselves and with you all, because if we can't do that, then how can we ask you to give us our vote if we've lied to you?
Who are you, sorry?
My name is Joshua Hendricks.
Say-
I'm the chief strategist.
say again, please.
My name is Joshua Hendricks, Joshua Hendricks, and I am the chief strategist and campaign manager.
I was just wondering if you're the husband, like,
My husband's in the back there.
Oh.
I'm the candidate witness.
Any other questions for these two? Then what's next?
So the next will be statements from the candidates who were attacked. Trey, do you want to start off? And then, Mitchell, you be up next.
Who needs one of the papers?
Trey, please identify yourself before. Oh, yeah, and who needs papers? Teams 2, Team 1, Team 5, raise hands.
I'm Trey Lucas. I am the Chief of Medicine at Vanderbilt Hospital, and I'll be running for 5th Congressional.
I'm Ashley McVeigh, and I'm the campaign manager of Dr. Lucas' campaign.
One thing I must get clear is I did not lose my medical license, as Ms. Carroll stated. Several years ago, it became clear that 2 unrelated but high-profile patients had developed and addicting to a painkiller I prescribed. This, combined with the recent spotlight of the opioid epidemic, caused an onslaught of scrutiny of our department at Vanderbilt, and with me as a physician being made a focal point. After consulting with the board of directors at Vanderbilt, I made the decision to voluntarily step down from my position as chief of medicine for 6 months to gain access to reflect on what I did, to consult with some other medical professionals, and to reevaluate the procedures I relied on in the past regarding my patient treatment. As we have seen in my fellow candidate Mitchell, the unfortunate situation leading to the abuse of related painkillers happens far too often, even to the own progress and even to the most responsible users. Ultimately, the patient is responsible to monitor his or her own progress, and part of that process is continuing to consult with their doctor to determine the appropriate dosage as we move forward in healing. When I consulted with my patients, while I make use of science available to me prescribing potentially addictive pain medication, I also relied largely on what the patient has given me as far as information of their needs. In the case at hand, I believe I took action in pursuance of a betterment of health of my patient. Yes, I took a risk to help a person in need. While I regret the unfortunate dependence that resulted in the pain medication I prescribed, I do not regret doing what I believe is right and the right course of treatment, regardless of the boardroom politics. Science has taught us much about opioid-related pain medication in recent years. And moving forward, I plan to work with doctors and researchers in the medical field to expand the physician range of options for pain medication and rehab, including the introduction of legalized marijuana in the state of Tennessee. My campaign manager is going to explain.
We're gonna
Hang on,
move that
yeah.
to a different.
Questions for the candidate?
Yes.
So did this whole situation ultimately lead to your interest in marijuana and your ultimate scandal?
This did not. This was, it happened, the introduce of marijuana was when my wife was suffering cancer, and we dealt with the medical marijuana then, so this has nothing to do with
And so what exactly was the direct path of her access to the medical marijuana? How did she get it?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
How did she get the marijuana from a plant to her possession? Where did it come from?
I gave her the marijuana.
Where did you get it?
But we no, we're gonna put this on the thing. As a husband, I went to Utah, which is where we give it. I know it's illegal to cross the border with marijuana, but as a husband, as a person on my personal side, I gave it to her.
I think it's safe to say, in every way, you kind of took your actions more personal than professional. So that being said, I mean, it's illegal in Tennessee, so before you said you prescribed it, now you're saying that you went to go get it. Who did you get it from when you crossed the border to go get it? Because you can't go out of state to prescribe it somewhere else.
I did not. No, it's like if you were to go to Utah and pick up marijuana, you would get it from a dealer. Yes. Yes, and I picked it up.
Why didn't you just buy it off of Jesus? Why did you go out of state to go buy it off a dealer when you could have just bought it from somebody here? With it in an oil, with medical marijuana, it's in the form of an oil, so now you're now saying that you went and bought off somebody like a dealer off the street.
All right, no further questions. We changed to a different.
Because they have the media has a memory.
I don't think that.
Are you done with questions completely?
I'm done with the medical marijuana
Okay.
patients. Yes.
The people you oversubscribed to, are they in any relations to you?
No.
No. Were they just patients? Were
Yeah,
they
they were normal
work for you
patients.
at all or anything?
No, did not
Okay.
work for me. Just normal patients.
All right. Just because over here it says nurses, that they were your nurses. So just clarifying that.
The Carol.
The Carol,
Oh.
yeah.
They
It
claimed that
says
they were
that
nurses, not
they were your nurses.
patients, that's why she was asking.
So based on the information that they gave you, you believe that it was right to give them the amount that you gave when you overprescribed them for their condition?
No, I think that's a Leo in words. It's like if your doctor gave you prescription and you said that you were feeling more pain than what you really were feeling. So I gave them what they had told me, and that's further. I mean, there's nothing more to explain about that.
And did they receive any negative side effects from the amount of?
No, not from my understanding.
Was
Yep.
this one prescription you prescribed them once, or were they coming back again to request more?
No, this was just once. But
So it was one
let me
prescription?
further explain that. It was once in a sense of, okay, they said that this was not working, so I would give them something else in order to help them relieve the pain that they're feeling. So
But it was a quantity in which you found suitable for the amount of pain they were in,
Correct.
not continuously coming in to check that they did have pain and that.
this was, yes, it was a process in which I checked to see if they were actually experiencing the pain, and I can't necessarily block that out. I have to give them what they've asked.
But they came
But I
to
also
you
have
more
the
than
knowledge that-
once, rather than you just saying, here, have 120 on the first visit, correct?
Well, we came back, yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Ms. Carroll claimed that, like we just said, that it was your nurses that you prescribed. So was that a lie that she said those were your nurses?
Ms. Carroll has a tendency to lie, so yes. All right, that's all for now.
All right.
Mitchell, the Casto campaign.
I just need Jesus.
What information do you need first?
State your name and quiet, everybody.
Mitchell Casto, C-A-S-T-O. And I'm
you-
running for Congress in Tennessee's 5th District. I'm currently a state senator and history professor at Tennessee State University.
Yep. One here. One here.
Ladies and gentlemen of the 5th Congressional District of Tennessee, as I'm sure all of you are aware by now, this past week, news has surfaced that 2 years ago I was temporarily suspended from teaching at Tennessee State University due to an issue with opioids. Unfortunately, this is true. Relating back toward just shortly after the DUI discussed earlier in this campaign under opioids, I briefly had a stint with opioids, in which case I was put on a temporary suspension at Tennessee State University. When on opioids, you become accustomed to taking them at a certain time. You get used to the schedule, you get used to constantly being on them, and eventually you do develop a form of dependency. You stop to feel less physical pain, but you start to feel a phantom pain that's not there. But psychologically, you feel like you're in that pain. Your body physically feels like it needs it to move on, which is not necessarily the case, obviously. over this month-long period that I faced, eventually I realized after my prescription was up, and I realized that I had that urge that I needed more pain. I felt like I was in pain, but realistically, logically, I knew I wasn't, and I realized this had become an issue. So I went to the dean of the history department at Tennessee State University, and I told them what was going on. I said I needed to seek treatment. And they said that, unfortunately, we have no other option but to place you on temporary suspension while you go to your treatment. So for a 1 month period, I checked myself into an inpatient rehabilitation facility, and after 1 month, that was fine. I realized after this how easy it is to become dependent on opioids, how easy they can affect you. And I also realized that many Tennesseans may not have the foresight or the ability to see before it happens and gets too bad, and before their lives are in jeopardy, that it's becoming an issue. I was fortunate enough to see that at the time. I was fortunate enough to realize that it was becoming an issue and take care of it myself before anything happened to me, which is why the opioid epidemic in Tennessee is a very big thing to me. I've realized how easy it is and how many people it can affect and how many lives it's taken. In 2016 alone, there were over 1,600 opioid deaths. In 2016, there were 1,148 prescriptions per 1,000 Tennesseans. That's more than one prescription for every man, woman, and child. This campaign wants to go out to fix that. We want to stop all these things. We want to make it easier to make easier access to rehabilitation facilities and treatment. We want to reduce the number of prescriptions that are being handed out and reduce the overprescription of these medications. And we want to reduce the stigma that goes against people for going out and seeking treatment. If you realize you have an issue and you're going out to make yourself better, then that's a good thing. We want people to go and seek that treatment. We want people to get help. As I've said before, people make mistakes in the past. There's no reason to go and cower. You become a coward when you don't get back out there and use your life and the stories of your past to go out and lead to a better progression of society. You want to become part of the change based off your own experience. You don't want to sit there and let it happen to other people. Just because I was able to overcome it doesn't mean other people can. And that's this campaign's going to be here to help. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions?
At any time, were you teaching your students under the influence of opioids?
I was once, absolutely, and that's the part when I realized toward the end of my prescription that it was becoming an issue.
Sure.
I had students, no students have directly gone on record and said that I seemed like I was high, but I did have students that I sincerely cared about, students that were future history majors. It would be the continuance of my profession that came to me and would ask after class, are you okay? You seem slightly off. And that was the moment I realized I needed to go talk to the dean of the history department and check myself in a rehabilitation facility.
So, according to Ms. Carroll in her statement, she said that one of the students basically found you high in your office. Do you refute that statement?
It was in the classroom. It wasn't while I was in my office, and they never officially went on record anywhere and said I was high. They never even accused me of being high. They did come to me and said that they were concerned. Whether they thought that I was high, whether they felt that I was going through some kind of emotional trauma, is up to the student. But all they told me was that they were concerned with making sure I was okay. They wanted to be there to comfort me as their teacher, as one of their mentors. And so I realized I deserve better to my students. They deserve better from me, and I'm going to go take care of them. Yes, ma'am.
So how did Ms. Carroll get a hold of the information if no student has gone on record to accuse you of anything whatsoever, and that was only a personal conversation between you and the student?
That information was actually not public record, which my campaign manager will discuss at a later point in time. We will come to that. But
So you don't know?
no, we are aware exactly how, but that is for later.
It's not going to address it.
No, we will. My campaign manager is going to address that. I promise. We will answer all questions. I wouldn't leave you stranded. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, okay, let me get this right. So, before you was on this camping trip with your son,
Yes.
you had some surgery, you got the opioids, that's when you started, right?
Yes, I did.
And then shortly after, you hopped off and switched to a lesser medication, and then you went back to teaching and then back to taking opioids.
These were two separate instances. The first instance when I was with my son was after his surgery. I had gotten an instance later on, a physical trauma where I was in pain that I went back for a different prescription. I was never reduced from a larger prescription to a shorter prescription. After I got off my first prescription from surgery, that was the end of that. And then this was a later date shortly after, during the same year.
What was the difference before, after you had taken the opioids and you were like, okay, I'm feeling fine, and then hopped off to something lighter, versus now where you felt this phantom pain? Sounds like addiction, buddy. But you were taking this phantom pain where you thought you were having this pain and you felt like you still needed to take these drugs.
So let me answer both those. They're two separate questions. So the first part, as I said, one of the big issues with the opioid epidemic is overprescription. The first time they were not overprescribed. The second position, overprescribed medication, which also led to the issue. The first time my prescription was the perfect length of time it needed to be, I got off and it was fine. The medication wasn't overprescribed. And what was the second part of your question?
The second part was what was the difference between before where you were able to overpass this pain of, you had surgery?
Yes.
And then now where it was a different pain that you weren't.
Because now, like I
overpassing?
said, when you get on opioid dependency, you start to feel it's a psychological thing. Your body physically, like psychologically makes you think you need it. The first time the dosage wasn't long enough, they weren't overprescribed. It was the perfect length, my body didn't have time to develop any form of dependency whatsoever. The second time, the prescription was way over what it should have been. Obviously, I'm not a physician, I wouldn't know that, but I realized afterwards, obviously, when you get to the point that you start to develop forms of dependency, and you need to go seek treatment.
Okay, and then last question.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more question, then we'll be happy to contact you.
Sir.
Appreciate it. So, gotcha. So you talked about the opioids causing death, and then it comes out saying that you were taking these opioids while in class. Tell me what it would have been like to have a student walk on you dead, or walk in on you dead.
That'd be extremely disappointing, both as a professional historian and also as a mentor of these children. They deserve better, like I said. It's the whole reason I went and seek treatment. I would never forgive myself if any student had to see that. If any student had to deal with that. They deserve better from their professors. They deserve better from any politician, any fellow citizen in the nation. Which is why I'm determined to be better, which is why I'm determined to be part of that progress. To go out there and make it to where everybody can seek for treatment they need, and then we're not going to continue to make an issue in our nation with overprescription.
Thank you very much for your time. My contact information is in your media release. If you would like to seek further information about the opioid crisis in Tennessee and across the nation, we urge you to look at the Tennessee Department of Health and the Centers for Disease Control websites for more statistics. Thank you.
Okay, this is later in the day, and an extraordinary news conference has been called by two competing campaigns. The Casto and Lucas campaigns have called a joint news conference and I'll let them introduce themselves, staffers.
My name is Ashlyn McBee, and I'm the campaign manager for Dr. Lucas's campaign.
Spell your first and last name, please.
ASHLYN, Ashlyn McBee, MC, capital B-E-E.
And my name is Mark Swartz. I'm the press secretary for Mr. Mitchell Casto's campaign.
Spell your last name, please.
SWARTZ.
Thank you.
And we'd like to thank you folks for coming out this evening. We realize your time is valuable, and we're glad you could join us today.
So I have a statement regarding April Carroll's campaign from Dr. Lucas's campaign. Miss Carroll and her brother Charles, the Deputy Governor of Tennessee, through the exploitation of the political offices, have breached intelligence protocols by utilizing professional access to information for inappropriate purposes. The exploitation by Miss Carroll of her position to capitalize and politicize her own personal advancement at the expense of her opponents, especially in a highly inappropriate attack on Dr. Lucas in a very personal and intimate time, reveals the true nature of her agenda: win the election at all costs. The breach of private information by an elected official should never be tolerated, nor should it be publicized. When public office is exploited for private gain, that is the actual and true definition of corruption, and we will not tolerate this type of abuse in public office. We elect officials to represent us in government affairs, not in order to promote a candidate's own personal interests. Therefore, the behavior of Miss Carroll and her cronies should be seen as not only corrupt but abhorrent. Miss Carroll's complicity in these actions clearly demarks her as unfit for office and should be enough to request a recusal of Miss Carroll from seeking any position of public office. Regardless, if the powers choose to keep her on the ballot, then we will use every possible resource available to us to ensure that the voters are aware of her gross indiscretions, so that each Tennessean who turns out to vote is well equipped with the knowledge of her true character. Thank you.
Unbeknownst to many citizens, the information regarding Mr. Casto's teaching suspension was not public record. Any attempt on behalf of the public to search for that information will be fruitless, as this information can only be found in the Tennessee State Employee Archives. Recently, the Lucas campaign and the Senator Casto's campaign were reached out to by the Assistant Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Personnel with shocking information about collusion and foul play. According to the Assistant Commissioner, Republican candidate April Carroll's brother, Charlie Carroll, serves as the Deputy Governor of Tennessee. Ms. Carroll went to her brother seeking for any possible information that could defame the character of her political rivals. Mr. Charlie Carroll has been calling State Department heads seeking any information to harm his sister's opponents. When the Assistant Commissioner got the call, he justly blew the whistle on the Deputy Governor's corruption and abuse of power. The Carroll campaign legally obtained private information with the intent to defame her political rivals. If we cannot trust Ms. Carroll to not abuse the power of connections to suppress anyone who challenges her, then how can we trust her with the responsibilities of a congresswoman? This campaign will not lower itself to such childish antics. We'll stand and we'll fight for hope and the promise of a better future for every American. Thank you and good afternoon.
Questions? Has the deputy governor been charged?
There have been no charges pressed at this time.
And he happens to be here.
Oh.
This is the last player, I promise.
We're getting a little long. We're at minute 28.
Do you plan on pressing any charges against the deputy?
We have not determined that at this time yet.
Neither is our campaign.
Okay, we'll let the deputy, we'll let that go.
Yeah, we're thinking. All right, last questions.
I'm still not understanding how the information got out from the student having the conversation with Mr. Casto. If it was nothing that went on record, it was a conversation between the two of them, there shouldn't be a paper trail for them to even find.
We're not discussing the interaction between Mr. Casto and his students at this time.
So you're avoiding that question as well, so we can get a question answered from you or Mr. Casto regarding this situation, correct?
Like I said, my information is down there. You're free to contact the office at a later time.
So, is it fair to say that your candidate is running for the people, to represent the people?
Yes, sir.
And in your statement, you said that this information wasn't public knowledge, but shouldn't the public know who really is representing them?
Yes.
Okay, not further question.
All right, let's give it up here, guys. It's good.